We'll start with the invocation. It's Monday, October the 4th. All council members present, town manager, town attorney, town clerk, and members of the community.
As we gather today together, let us be ever thankful for the opportunity to serve. We ask that this meeting be guided with wisdom, productivity, and respect for one another as we work together to accomplish a common goal for the good of our community and its citizens. Let our hearts and heads be filled with hope for a brighter future. We pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item is the approval of the final agenda. There are no changes or a motion to approve the final agenda.
I move to approve the final agenda.
Moved. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, if we
Yes, sir.
could, I'd like to pull C, consent agenda C, for a little more discussion.
I'll amend my motion to pull C.
Okay.
I'll amend my second.
Thank you, amenders. Any further discussion? Any objection? The motion carries. Okay, the next item is public comment. Madam Clerk?
Karen Woodson.
Morning.
Morning.
I think all of you know me by now. I've been up here several times. And I'm here again. Two things today. It's the board cab reappointment and the LPA. So I'm hoping that for the LPA, the third time's a charm. I'm just wondering if any of you have any questions for me that I could answer that might make anything more clear on my resume and background. I'm here to answer anything you may have. And if not, thank you. Fingers crossed.
Thank you.
Ellen Vaughn.
Morning. My name is Ellen Vaughn. I'm a resident of Fort Myers Beach, residing in what I call the suburban south end of the island at 7500 Estero. I'm here because, like Karen, I'm interested in being appointed to one of the advisory committees. I'm interested in being appointed to the Cultural and Environmental Learning Advisory Board Committee, better known as CELCAB. I have a particular passion and interest for the Mound House, and it also extends to what's going on at Newton Park and the Newton House, because I think that's an important cultural facility for the town as well. And I know the people who serve on this committee are very committed, as am I, and I hope you honor my appointment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen.
I have.
Is there anyone else here that hasn't filled out a card that may want to speak? Jane?
The others I have are for the public hearings.
Okay.
Summer, for the record, I'm here for reappointment for the LPA, and I love your support, and I love doing it because it keeps me up to date on everything, and I communicate a lot with the realtors, try to keep them in line with what's going on, and also we need history on the LPA, and they're the longest. So,
Thanks, Jane. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak before we get underway here? Okay, we'll close the public comment. Next item is local achievements and recognitions. Councilman Allers?
Just one, congratulations to now Chief Martin on his promotion to the fire chief.
Yes, Mayor.
I'd like to thank the folks at the Lee County Waste Management Facilities. Jennifer, Dexter, and I went out there for quite an extended tour. They spent a lot of time with us, answered many questions. It's a very well-run facility. I was very impressed, and we do have tours available, so if folks are interested in what's happening to the stuff once it leaves your curb, let them know, because they'll give you a tour of the facility. It's very, very interesting. I want to thank them for their time.
That tour years ago. It is very interesting. I'll would just echo your comment, Dan, about Chief Martin. Congratulations. He's going to do a great job. Councilman Adderholt?
Just a couple quick things. I had a chance with my wife a couple weeks ago to participate in the Keep Lee County Beautiful campaign. I think they partnered with the Ocean Conservancy. They had hundreds of volunteers all over the county, and we were stationed at Lovers Key Park, and we were given a couple large trash bags. Never thought we could fill them, but we entered the Lovers Key bridge there on the south end, and we went behind the rocks. My wife in particular was a good scout. We filled up both bags with beer cans, beer bottles, plastics, and of course the cigarette butts that are everywhere with filters that don't biodegrade. I just want to commend the folks involved in that effort. It was great, and we had a chance also on this past Saturday to stop by the Restore the Arches fundraiser at Margaritas. Thank all the people that are putting forth an effort to try to raise the private dollars to make that Restore the Arch at Bowditch Park possible. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Being last, I have nothing new to add. But congratulations, Chief Martin, and thanks to Chief Love for his service.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on. The next item is advisory committee items and reports. See John's here from the Public Safety Committee. John Goggin.
John Goggin, here as chairman of the Public Safety Committee, doing our report as requested. Before I start on the status of our current workload, I want to formally recognize Tom Gressman, who has served on the Public Safety Committee since its reorganization over 3 years ago. He served as vice chair, been a staunch champion of bicycle safety, spending many hours visiting other communities to research best practices and markings and signage for cyclists, represented Fort Myers Beach on the county MPO, has been a constant voice for the community interest. He served admirably now for the past 3+ years and is stepping down as his term ends this month. So please take a moment, reach out to him, and thank him for his service. He's done a great job.
Thank you, Tom.
Now, if you watched the Public Safety Committee meeting in September, you heard frustration and disappointment expressed by every member of that committee. Although the comments were triggered by the council's recent budget actions regarding community policing, these sentiments have been expressed on other occasions by our committee as well. Disappointment vocalized was a feeling of loss for the community, a sense that a valuable service that would have been benefited the community will not happen. All our research, conversations with affected parties, lengthy debates led to a unanimous decision to recommend the council fund the program. So that when the funding was allocated, naturally there was disappointment, and that was expressed at the meeting. I want to be clear, the committee members understand our role is as an advisory group. Our role is limited to making recommendations, and that you, the council, has a responsibility to objectively weigh those recommendations alongside other policies, investments, and programs competing for funding. The disappointment expressed wasn't based on our overreach of our role or our challenge to your responsibilities. It was just an expression of a lost opportunity. Disappointed expressed, it was just, excuse me. It wasn't based on overreach or role. It was just an expression of our lost opportunity, disappointment expressed by a group that invested hours of personal effort into making an informed recommendation. The other sentiment that was surfaced at the meeting was frustration, feeling exacerbated by poor two-way communication between the advisory committee and the council. Provide regular reports to the council on our activities, our research from which we make informed recommendations for your consideration. Yet we seldom have any feedback from the council members. There are sudden follow-up questions, no confirmation of understanding, either agreement or disagreement, no opportunity to clarify understanding. Frustration is compounded when the council adopts a recommendation and there is no closure. Items stay open, waiting for necessary action by the council or the town staff. Not seeking to revisit history or debate past actions. Instead, we are here to offer a plan to open up the dialogue, ensure we are working on your priorities, and directing our research to the objectives you are hoping to achieve. We are asking for a joint meeting between the council and the Public Safety Committee. The purpose of that meeting is to take the list of open item agendas, which we've provided to you, you have in your packet today, Establish a council priority and verification of objectives for each category. The outcome of that discussion will set the committee agenda for this fiscal year. Last year, there was no joint committee meeting, only meeting of committee heads. We are asking for this joint meeting so that each member of the committee can express their positions and you hear their voices, with the goal of establishing a two-way dialogue that allows better understanding of your objectives, which in turn will result in more aligned research agenda and improved service to the council. Final recommendation intended to improve communications and understanding is that in addition to our assigned council member liaison, each member rotate attendance at our meeting to hear for themselves to the dialogue at that committee level. Regularly scheduled meeting is October 19th. Any comments?
I have no objection to having a joint meeting with the Public Safety Committee.
Do I?
Be great.
Bill?
Oh, I concur.
Oh, and we do this as soon as possible because next year's calendar for that committee really is based on that list that we provided to you, and it's prioritizing that. It's following up on actions that are open that you've already approved recommendations on, but most importantly, what is your goal in trying for us to research that particular item? So, you're open on the 19th. I ask that you set this meeting up as soon as you can. Other comments? Thanks.
Roger, sounds like there's a unanimous agreement to have a joint meeting, so if you want to check the calendar for some, it's
Clerk will coordinate that date.
While we're here, I'm looking at my calendar, the 19th is open for me, so for Amy's assistance. I don't know about everybody else, but
what day is that?
it's a Tuesday on the 19th, the day after our town meeting on the 18th.
All right, okay.
The suggested date is not during a normally scheduled council meeting.
The town council meeting scheduled is the 18th, which is the Monday prior to that.
Okay, anything else on this? We'll move on then. Next item is approval of minutes. These are the town council meeting of September 9th, MNP Management and Planning session on September 16th, the town council meeting of September 16th.
I have an amendment for a regular meeting of the 16th on page 18. Administrative agenda, it lists the legal services contract renewal, but does not reflect what the vote was. So we just need to add the vote to it.
Okay. Other changes, corrections?
I'll move to adopt all three sets of minutes with the stated amendment.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? The objection? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, the next item is the consent agenda. Item C has been pulled for discussion. Is there a motion to approve the balance of that agenda, which is the Stray Animal Control Services 5-year interlocal agreement, and also ratify the direct purchase of site furnishings?
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Moved?
I'll second.
And moved and seconded. As amended. As amended, Bill? As amended.
As amended.
Seconded.
Sure.
Any discussion? Action? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, Councilman Allers, you pulled item C. Floor is yours.
Yes, sir. I just had a couple of questions. It seems like this hasn't been visited in quite a long time. It's something that we would want to looking every year going forward as elections happen and people come and go. There's a lot of names that I had noticed on here that have been gone for quite a while. I'm just concerned that if we don't visit it, that something could get missed.
Do you have any comments on that?
I have no problem with making an annual review, but probably I'm guessing the audit committee would have something to say about that, whether it's necessary or not.
And I'm totally fine with it. It just seemed to me that it hasn't been visited in quite a long time. Mm-hmm. And it would be something, and also it doesn't list who is going to be the new people signed to be able to sign off on that card.
I was assuming that it kind of came up because SunTrust was bought out, and so there was a deeper review of paperwork than normally
Well,
happens.
as someone that personally banks there, I can tell you I'm dealing with the same frustration.
Yes,
So
yes, me too.
I'm fully aware of it.
It does mention here, Councilman Allers, the recommendation to authorize signers are the mayor, vice mayor, town manager, and town clerk.
That's on the paperwork for Truist, but it doesn't actually say, that's my understanding of that way that reads. The paperwork that Truist Bank is requesting is from the list that you read off. Not necessarily that that's who will be approved to use the card. Is that correct?
Well, so let's be clear. Who's approved to use the card? The card is used by, basically every director has a credit card. So Allison, Chelsea, Christie, Amy, myself. And then we have some other employees who need it for like emergency purchases on the weekends and stuff like that. One has a credit limit. All their receipts are verified prior to payment of a monthly bill. So that's a routine matter in terms of who in town uses the card. Question of who's sort of the account holder and who can change limits and delete people is what those four persons who Councilman Beach listed.
Okay, so through the bank,
That's how it works. That part of it works.
Okay.
It does seem like this predates Roger by quite a bit, so congratulations on finding this and cleaning it up, Roger.
Well, this is just so you know that this is sort of a typical credit card like you probably have in your wallets. We have other credit cards like for gas, Home Depot, Lowe's, and other things. And we're going through all of those, and basically the idea would be to have the account holders to be the same four people that are on this item.
Again, my point of the whole thing was just to, as mayors change, as elections change, that we keep this updated with the bank. It's kind of the way I was going with it.
Yes, I assume, and I wasn't here as Councilman Beach says, but I assume that when updates were done in the past, I think the assumption was that person X was coming off and person Y was coming on. And apparently what happened was they just kept adding people. So we've talked to them and made that clear. And of course, we will update that information as often as it needs to be. So for example, council will be doing a reorganization in November. Should there be change in who's the mayor or vice mayor, we would adjust the account accordingly.
Right, perfect. That's all I had, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
I'll move to approve Resolution 2150.
I'll second that. Any discussion? To clean it up, there are a lot of old names on there, Roger, that go way back.
I didn't know.
Yeah, well, there's a story behind every one of them. But anyhow, any further discussion? Objection to the motion? Carries unanimously. Okay, thank you, Dan. Okay, the next item is public hearings. We're going to go into some public hearings. And the first one, A, is Coast Guard temporary use permit. This is to approve of 2 modular office trailers with utility hookups and temporary fencing inside the Moss Marine warehouse for approximately 2 years. Is there someone here? Yes, John.
Yeah, the following 3 items are quasi-judicial nature. So anyone who's going to testify regarding these, any of these 3 items, should stand and raise the right hand.
Anyone who's going to testify at any of these 3 items, the Coast Guard, Variance on Carlos Circle, or the special exception for consumption on premises and video arcade. We have everybody covered? Okay, go ahead, John.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. The witnesses have been sworn, and then as each item gets called up, then it would be appropriate for the council members to disclose any ex parte communications.
Okay. Well, starting with the Coast Guard, has anyone had any ex parte communications? None for myself either. Okay, is there someone here from Moss Marine or the Coast Guard or? No. Okay. John, how are we going to have a hearing here with this, on this item?
You can rely upon the staff report or ask for a staff report, and if there's no one else who wishes to speak to the item, you can
Move on.
move on, or alternatively, you can continue it with directing staff to inform the applicant that they should have a representative here at the next meeting.
Well, let's move on. Let's just keep going with it. Is there a staff member here that's going to speak to this?
Jason Green is coming in now. He'll have to be sworn in, John. About the Coast Guard.
Tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Morning.
Morning, how are you, sir?
Good.
Before you is the temporary use permit for the Coast Guard facilities. Essentially, it's temporary office trailers inside an existing facility. And there's some fencing inside to keep their side separate and secure from internal to the other users. That's the basics of what this is within the Moss Marine footprint. And it'll be temporary for approximately 2 years. They're requesting.
And the underlying, Mr. Mayor, I think the item speaks, the underlying issue is their headquarters across the river is going to be renovated, and that's why they need temporary space.
Yes.
So typically, we don't like trailers because of, building code and concerns about hurricanes and things like that, but this is going to be inside another building. So we felt that the space that Moss Marina can use for their commercial purposes is limited, and to the extent that this use is using up some of that available capacity, really present an issue. And helps the U.S. Coast Guard, which of course we're, to the extent that we can help them, we would like to help.
Thank you for that explanation. Any questions for Mr. Green? Thank you, Jason. Yes.
I move we adopt.
I think we got to have a little, open it up for public comment.
Public hearing.
Yeah, public hearing. So is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this item? Hearing none, we'll close that. Yes, sir, go right ahead.
Move we adopt the motion to approve installation of 2 modular office trailers with utility hookups and temporary fencing inside the Moss Marine warehouse for approximately 2 years.
Second.
Move and second. Our chance to discuss. Is there any discussion here on the council? Hearing none, is there any objection to? Yes, sir.
I don't know if the council would like to, rather than say approximately 2 years, set a date so that if they're not done by that date, they come back before you, or you're comfortable with approximately 2 years or not.
What do you recommend, Roger? Do you think we should hammer it down?
Well, if you make it November 2023, then we'll have it tickled on our calendars, and they'll either be done or we'll ask them to come back, and they can explain how much more time they'll need to us. So we'll have the benefit of that information. If you're comfortable that give or take a couple of months may not matter, then you can go with the way it is.
You feel about that?
I'm comfortable with the way the motion is currently drafted, and I think, again, because it's all within Moss Marina, there'd be minimal adverse impact to the public, so I'm comfortable with the way it's written. I hate to have them have to come in here if they're just a month or two over. Discuss that, so I'm comfortable with the way it is.
I've seen them for once, anyhow.
Always happy to see them, but
I concur. I think that probably after 2 years inside a trailer, inside a building, they'll be more than encouraged to get this remodeling done as expediently as possible.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Motion carries unanimously as okay. The next item is the variance 2021-0058, which is for 506 and 508 Carlos Circle. And it's a variance for a pool location and street setback. This is to approve or deny with conditions. 506, 508 Carlos Circle variance for pool location and street setback. Mr. Green.
Morning, Jason Green, Community Development. As you said, the variance for a pool setback, accessory structure essentially in the front yard. As you'll see in the pictures in a minute, they're kind of on a corner, so to speak. The property, 506, 508, there's a history of the property, including the applicant buying it in 2020, Residential Conservation Zoning District. The request is for section 341174B, which is allow the pool forward to the primary structure, and table 34-3, which is a reduction of 15 feet in the setback. As I mentioned, sort of corner, it's a rounded frontage, so pretty much everything along that frontage, along the street is the front yard and setback, so therefore there's really no place appropriate for the pool. It is technically to the side of the house, so it's not really forward except by definition of our code. It does need the variance for that. There was a lot of discussion at the LPA about the actual setback itself. And I'll get into let me go back to that. So staff had recommended some conditions related to basically buffering along that front. So 10 feet being approximately a 10-foot type B buffer. That would start from the adjacent property owner to the east property line to the front corner of the house, screening the pool. And is 10 feet there on the that recommendation. There was some wording that was done at the LPA as far as their recommendation to allow some encroachment because that was measuring to the corner of the pool. And so what they allowed for is up to 3 feet of around the corner of that pool to be for walkway to encroach into that 10-foot setback. And I know the applicant's got a drawing, a design that they've done since then for that. Was the only time that encroachment will be allowed is if they have a maximum of 10-foot separation from the house to the pool. That was part of the issue. They wanted to make sure the house wasn't, or the pool wasn't right up on top of the house. But if they go further than that, that's their choice, and they should have the right to encroach because they their way out. So that was the wording that the LPA recommended on that condition. Your findings can be found on page 63 in your packet, the recommendation on 64, and it was recommendation approval with conditions. And as I mentioned, the LPA listed and tweaked that other or in the encroachment of that walkway around the pool. Questions? I'd be happy to answer.
Mayor, if I could.
Right ahead, sir.
Jason, as you remember from the last meeting, and I don't know when, John, we need to do our disclosures, but we have had some, at least I have, I think my colleagues have had some emails and contact at the last meeting because of some notification error. Demonstrators, I don't think were notified that this had been extended to this meeting. So there was a gentleman who flew to the meeting, flew to Fort Myers Beach for the last meeting, 1,500 miles for Monstrate. Of course, it was delayed until today. I spoke with him during a break. I think the mayor did. And I think Jason, you and I chatted briefly with him. I guess my concern is, and as a former member of the LPA, I always respect the recommendations of the LPA, but what often happens at an LPA hearing is it sort of acts like a canary in a coal mine, and that it will generate attention to a matter that will then later build up additional public input. And I think that's what happened here, because I don't think anybody remonstrated against it at the LPA meeting, having watched that particular meeting. So I guess, and I think there's a few other neighbors that have some concerns, and unfortunately the owner of the building or of the home didn't show up to the LPA, and I don't know if they're here today, but I'd like to discuss the person who was here to remonstrate. Was very respectful, very kind, said nice things about the owner, but he said, hey, this is going to be a short-term rental. We're going to have people here all the time. Is there something we could do more to enhance the privacy of this pool and put some more buffering in? And I think, Jason, I think we informally discussed it. I was wondering if you have any additional recommendations. I know the staff has done some recommendations, but based upon the remonstration that we've heard, is there more we can do to protect the neighbors from this pool and then the noise and the other issues that come from having a short-term rental nearby? And just with your professional background, I don't want to put you on the spot, but anything additional we could add to help protect the neighbors of this particular pool?
While I have that conversation, I'll see if Jason can bring up, the other Jason, can bring up the images that the applicant provided, because it is a design actually that we could probably use that as a discussion purposes. So I think the buffer was along the frontage, because that's usually the common condition that the council and LPA have put on these pools, and we've tried to standardize that a little bit. I think the neighbor was to the east, which is kind of behind the pool. So as you can see, that curve of the roadway, and that wraps around to the neighbor's front yard. The rear of the house is pointing to that neighbor that you're talking about that was here. We're concerned about noise, and there is about 5 feet setback, as you can see from the eastern property line. That pool is. There's not really a restriction on, or I'm sorry, additional landscape buffer, and there's not a restriction on other things going in that 5 feet. That might be is protecting that 5 feet. Whether they put a pool cover in or other things that could go along with the pool that take footers and then end up really getting closer and closer to that property line. That's what you're referring to. Fences and landscaping are always things that people to mitigate. I don't know that they always work, but visual barrier at least. Here, everything my neighbor does in their pools, and I've got an 8-foot hedge, so I don't know how much it works, but at least
So again, not wanting to put you on the spot, could you add a couple recommendations this morning that could help enhance not just the noise, but also the privacy dynamics for the surrounding neighbors?
I think the first thing is to maybe ensure that there's no additional encroachment towards that 5 feet as shown by other things that may not be covered by building code or the pool code. So, I mean, I would specifically nothing allowed within that 5 feet. That's what I'm looking for. And then perhaps mimic the type B buffer that's along there, but in a 5-foot type B buffer. And even perhaps fence if that's along that eastern part, at least from the right of way to the house. Not further.
Thank you.
The discussion reminds me of the fact that we were supposed to do ex parte, and we did for the last, but I don't think we have for this hearing.
I apologize.
Getting ready to call for that.
Okay, my apologies.
That's all right.
It just reminded me. I don't believe I've been contacted by this gentleman, and I did a drive-by, but other than that, I have nothing.
I don't believe I have either, but I have done a drive-by.
As noted, I spoke with the gentleman when he came down here at the last meeting, albeit very brief, but I did make that connection.
Yeah, I basically had already disclosed my contacts, but yeah, the same gentleman, a couple different emails, but also met him in person at the last meeting.
So our conversation is simply expressing his concern about noise and of use that the pool is going to be, I think, over time.
Yeah, and I've got nothing. I remember an email some time ago, someone complaining about a project on San Carlos Circle, but that was before we had any kind of packet and information.
Counselor, to your question, there's, if you look at the picture, there's no landscaping to the right of the pool. No pavers there, so, whether or not you want to request additional landscaping down there, perhaps to try to further buffer, sound barrier, as Jason mentioned in his testimony, landscaping only helps so much, but, they help a little bit.
I appreciate that, Mr. Town Manager. I welcome any recommendations from the town or the staff on this matter.
A fence. As long as the property line, there's only so many ways that the use can be buffered, but certainly is within your discretion to either provide for enhanced buffering, landscaping, additional landscaping, or potentially fencing as well.
I think I remember this is a duplex, correct? So there's really 2 short-term rentals. Is that correct, Jason, or did I misremember that?
I believe that was the statement.
I see Jane in the audience. I don't want to put her on the spot, but she heard this and she's pretty smart on these matters. I'm open for suggestions. I think that I'm comfortable with the fence or additional landscaping, or preserving that 5-foot setback or whatever the staff would recommend. He just asked for some additional measures to help protect the neighbors, the surrounding property. And both you and Roger have suggested good suggestions, and I welcome the addition of those suggestions in the proposal.
Well, so what I'd ask is if that's the route that the council goes, let's just make sure you include that in what's included in the variance, so that there's flexibility with us to approve that fence as close to the right of way as possible without violating any ability or setback issues. Because there is also, you can't put a fence in over 4 feet tall in the front yard. And since it's a unique property with this whole curve that you see is all considered. We want to make sure it doesn't unfortunately get set back 25 feet and then defeats the you intended.
Again,
Aren't there already fence requirements around a pool?
Yes, there are 4-foot fence requirements by building code for protection, but not from a screening issue. So if a fence and landscaping were to be done along that eastern boundary up towards the right-of-way, to make sure we include the fence as part of the accessory structures allowed in the front yard. As the pool is being asked for, so we're not really changing what's being asked, but you're just, that additional structure is included.
Sounds like a good suggestion, yep.
Councilor Veach, so you know, based on the conversation of the council, you're talking about perhaps being a little bit more specific with the type of fence, being not one with slats, but more solid fence, perhaps, and the height. To address some of the concerns that Councilman Holt brought to light.
Specifically between this property and the adjacent property, not along the,
Just talking about that 5-foot section in the back, fencing that.
So currently you have a condition that proposes a 10-foot type B buffer along that front, what you saw. So yes, maybe that eastern. Please give that picture back up, sorry.
What height would help with the sound reduction? 6 foot?
Well, our standard is 6 feet. I don't have any studies that would tell us what would help with the sound, but the 6 foot is a typical that you can get much fake on the permitting. Anything above that typically requires structural engineering to permit.
I think 6 foot is probably enough.
Could also do some landscaping. If you do pick a type A or type B, there are requirements for trees and things that can grow over top of the fence at some point to buffer even further, help with the sound if you choose.
So, what are we talking about? One of those white plastic fences back behind it, 6 foot tall, however long that is there, section? That does sound good for that guy?
Sounds fair, yeah.
Sounds like he would be happy with that, I'm sure. Everybody all right with that, modifying the variance?
I'm fine.
Way?
I'm okay.
John, you want to include that in the
Yes,
variance?
obviously we need to have a public hearing, but once you're ready to
Right.
move forward with a motion for approval, we can help you make sure that you include in the condition of a 6-foot fence along the eastern property line between the two properties.
Have to include the word maybe solid fence.
Yeah, some
yes.
sort of closed fence. Okay, anything else, Jason?
For me, sir.
Okay, thank you.
The applicant may be here to speak on that.
Okay, we'll open it up to the public. Sir, would you like to speak?
Yes.
Okay,
And we own the property.
Jack?
We were present at the planning commission meeting, and I too booked flights to come down here for the other meeting. So our objective here is to have this property be beautiful property in the neighborhood. We believe the pool will enhance a lot. We love our neighbors to the east, and we need to put a 6-foot fence along that back side yard. I have no issue to that.
That's beautiful. Thank you very much. I
Yeah,
appreciate your
yeah,
comments, yeah, because your
they're-
neighbors were very complimentary of you as well, so, yeah.
They're just wonderful people. So we don't want to be people that. So
We don't hear that very often. Thank you.
Exactly, we're going to give you a medal today, I think, Jack.
one of the things, we have a property just up the road, and we have 5 kids, 9 kids. We actually, our family, so that's part of built into the. So where's the?
There.
Oh, okay. Could you put that other, go back one? We're very appreciative of staff's work on this. We're appreciative of the approval. And there's a couple things that we discovered. That type B buffer, 1 foot. We didn't realize when we had the last meeting that type B buffer kind of came out just days before the planning commission meeting. We had hired someone to do the variance, experts at that. We didn't really have enough time to kind of address the impact that might have. So if you look at that orange strip or yellow strip, that's 5 feet of that 10-foot buffer, and that's 5 foot with the bushes. If I have this right, Jason. So what we believe was approved is on the left-hand side of that picture. Allow a little bit of pool decking around that one corner. Could you blow that up at all, Jason?
He might be
You
able
can't.
I don't think he can if it's PDF.
Find me. The way that was approved. What we would like to ask is to make that type B buffer 5 feet. We'll support, putting all the bushes in there. Notice the amount of right-of-way between the street and that buffer, 17 and 25 feet, so it's very substantial. That difference makes a huge difference in the pool deck in terms of the usability and what the safety of the pool. So we're asking the town council to approve it, but reduce that buffer to 5 feet. Neighbors across the street are all on the bay, water. So we're really not, by having a little more pool deck. And Jason, can you go to that last diagram? Much more beautiful. It's beautiful in the neighborhood, more usable. We don't believe that that's going to create more noise to have that for the neighbors. No hardship. Because of the unique nature of the lot, it's not really setting any precedents for other properties. It would make that pool deck area. And the final thing would be that little triangle. Maybe go back, Jason, to the other one. And the staff was working with a lady that we hired. Initially had the pool 2.5 feet towards the neighbor. He said they'd like to keep it at the 5-foot setback. What that did is move the whole pool towards the street. You guys would approve it. We would greatly appreciate it if we could clear that off. Instead of a 15-foot back requirement there, that 2.5-foot triangle that go down to 17.5 feet just for that small little area. Trying to have it be beautiful, usable, nice addition to the neighborhood. And totally understand you don't want extra noise all the time. You live in a neighborhood that has pools, and as a general rule, people aren't in them all the time. People like to lay around and not had any issues.
Okay, anybody have any questions of Mr. Holsom? Thank you, sir.
Just, if I may, Jason Green, Community Development, that picture again, they're showing a 5-foot landscape buffer where the condition was 10 foot. Same number of plants at type B, one fits in 5, one fits in 10. I don't know if they do fit into 5, we haven't looked at that, but just if I'm interpreting their drawing correctly, because I just got this last night, he's saying is that notch that's in the yellow, shows as paver, that's what the way it was conditioned by the LP. Allow that little 3-foot encroachment for that paver area to wrap around the corner of that pool. When you do setbacks for pools, it's to the water essentially. Right, so then the question comes, well, what else is going around it? So it's not necessarily a setback issue for the pavers, but it's a question of use of that property. Make sense? So the pool meets the setback if it was what comes after that. So what other uses are you doing? So that's what the condition by the LPA is to notch that 10-foot area out, to have just a 3-foot paver. It sounds like what they're saying is they want to reduce it from 10 to 5 feet, to have a bigger paver than what the LPA had said.
Now, so just to clarify, when you say a 10-foot type B buffer, that means that whole 10 feet full of vegetation.
And the condition was drafted specifically to allow for that carve out in the yellow that you see. So the way the conditions were in is the green and the yellow would be a 10-foot buffer, and their allowance of about 3 feet around the corner of that pool, the northwest corner of that pool, for pavers.
The visual for what the LPA approved would actually be 10 feet of vegetation with a notch in the
It
vegetation?
would be the left drawing with 10 feet of vegetation around, all the way across, except for that area where it's notched out for about 3 feet. Northwest corner of that pool. It would have been 10 feet of vegetation, correct?
I'm just sorry, just to make sure I understand this, but, so you mean like the 10 feet of vegetation would be like shrubs and things that have an appropriate height, not 5 feet of shrubs and then 5 feet of grass?
Right, so when we say 10, when landscape buffers are 5 feet, 10 feet, 20-foot buffers, it's the width, the depth of the buffer. And then the type, A, B, C, and D, is the intensity of that buffer. The B dictates how many trees, what type of trees, how many bushes versus trees. And then the width of the buffer, 5 to 10 feet. Now, use the width of a buffer, not just only to fit that number of plantings in, but also for space and because of sound issues, right? So that's the intent generally for those buffers. Can you fit a type B buffer into a 5 foot? Maybe. Again, it's a different design between 5 and 10 feet. I believe the pool size is the same in both. That's always something to take. Shows the pool size.
So you notice the one on the left, just to be clear, has more patio versus the one on the right? Or decking?
Yeah, they reoriented. You can see it goes, the decking on the left goes closer to, goes along the street, towards the street, where the one on the right has more towards the buffer area, I guess. So looks like they're trying to get more area, not just 3 feet, but probably greater than that. I would say close to 5 feet around that northwest corner of the pool. A 5-foot buffer versus 10 foot with a notch, allowing for something to be encroaching in that buffer. The reason why that was conditioned that was because we don't allow things to be into the buffer. It's supposed to be landscaping and fencing and.
Would either of those pictures have any effect on the impervious surface calculations?
They're still limited by code to the 67%.
So neither one would affect that?
Now, does it, I don't know I haven't looked at the survey to see what the elevations of the sites are. So if there's a drainage issue, I don't know, but they'll have to address that in their plan. They'll have to have a drainage plan.
What's the distance from that corner on the right to the buffer versus on the left, that little slat that the LPA approved? How many feet is that? I can't see it from here.
The little wrapper on the corner by the LPA that you can see the yellow missing, that was, I believe, was supposed to be about 3 feet.
Yeah.
And I had to guess the extra triangle there in the northeast. That's what you're asking.
I'm just trying to, for safety reasons, getting around that edge of that pool.
The one on the right, Council Alex, I believe, is the minimum type of setback, whereas the 3 feet would be a little bit more room.
Again, part of the discussion was we have 10 feet of space from the house to the pool, right? So that was part of our discussion. What staff was concerned about is asking for all this, but then you're pushing the pool further and further out from the house. And we understand you're trying to make functional, usable area between the house and the pool, but it's the decision they were trying to make on mine. So we were trying to, as a justification of the variance, it was hard for us to agree to that when you keep pushing the pool further away from the house, when you could be 7 feet, 8, 6 feet, 5 feet.
Mr. Holsom, this is kind of out of order, but you have something to add to this? You come on up here, just, come on up, come on up.
We did, again, we want to accommodate everything. My hope is that with this diagram, and we had an architect draw it up, is if project here that better in place than that, but we kept the 10 feet. Point, we did take that deck that off in that upper right-hand corner. We're not trying to be greedy on the deck. We just want it to be beautiful and usable, not be a problem.
All right.
That's how that's configured around there. And again, we appreciate the 3-foot walkway. That was very nice. Just believe that this setup will be safer. And again, we're not trying to get this monster here a couple feet to walk in front of it without falling in the pool.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Jason?
I think it also speaks to Councilman Adderhalt's point of, is there conditions to limit maybe the amount of pavers and limit the square footage? Because we don't limit it other than 67%. So if you want to further limit that based on the drawing, that would be something to.
More questions of Mr. Green before we? Okay. We'll open this up to the public. Is there anyone else here from the public that wishes to speak to this? I guess technically, Mr. Holson, you could have another crack at it here if you'd like, but unless you've said enough.
Appreciate everyone's time to listen to this. I know it's a little thing, and these two little things of the making the buffer from 10 feet to 5 feet. Agree with the fence. We don't want to be a bother to the neighbor. If we could make those two small changes, difference to that property residents.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, anyone else from the public before we close it? Okay, we'll close the public comment portion of this, bring it back to the council. We'll just start off with, how do you all feel about what Mr. Holson is asking for as far as squaring off that deck? Does anybody have a problem with that?
I think it's fair if he's willing to do the fence.
Right. Right. Okay.
Yeah, I kind of prefer the LPA approved version with the cutoff there. I think that keeps the buffer and actually probably serves a purpose for the pool than the square one that and less likely, I think, to cause a conflict than a where he's sticking in.
Okay, so noted. I'll just add that LPA didn't have an opportunity to see what was happening here today as far as the negotiation goes with the fence and so forth. So Mr. Olson was willing to give a little more, and now the council is willing to give a little more as well, is the way I'm interpreting this. Oh, Mr. Attorney, you can fill in the holes in that variance the way it was presented here.
I do think that, let me take a look real quick at the, give me a moment. Need to look at and potentially modify on page 61 of your agenda packet under section 4. There is subsection B, 10-foot type B buffer shall be constructed along Carlos Circle. So we're talking about modifying that.
Yes.
To a 5-foot type B buffer.
Yes.
Correct? Yes. We would then be adding a new section 4B,
Yes.
requiring a 6-foot solid fence along the eastern property line. That's a condition of approval. I think that with regard to the changing section 4B, to go from a 10-foot as recommended to a 5-foot. I'm going to defer to Mr. Green because I think his statement was he wasn't sure that a type B buffer could be into a 5-foot wide area. It's outside my realm of knowledge and expertise to speak to that.
And is it possible to word it in a way that is just for the section that they need for that corner of the pool, not necessarily that entire curve back?
I think that that's the left version that was up. That on the graphic, it could be put back up, please, and left up. The item is over.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, you don't remove the 10 feet from the area that has nothing to do with the paver area or the decking.
Exactly.
There's a lot of linear feet in front of the house and further around the road that could be maintained as a 10 feet. And through landscape design, they can cluster things and do things, yes.
So it would be assuming that the board, or the council agrees, it would be a 10-foot type B buffer, except for the northeast corner. Probably constructed, I think that's,
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess that's the north.
we're talking about the left diagram, where it would be a 5-foot.
So John, I would actually say that the right diagram is, I
Yes.
think, what he's referring to. So if you look at the right diagram, you return the rest of that landscape buffer that's beyond the paver area to a 10-foot buffer.
Exactly, yes. Basically, if you were, that line from, would be the west part of the paver, the northwest corner to that northeast corner, kind of.
So where the pavers end, you pick up the 10-foot again.
Yes, exactly.
In both directions.
If that is what the council wants us to do, we'll make sure that that gets written properly. And then we would add in the additional requirement of the 6-foot solid fence along the eastern property boundary.
Okay. Thank you.
Was it clear, or we're voting for the picture on the right or the picture on the left? Let's just be clear, which one?
Either one, it's as modified.
I think it's a combination of both.
Right.
If you look at the one on the left and just extend that pool line on the left, or the paver line on the left straight up, and the one on the top straight across to where it meets the hedge buffer, you can visualize that. Everything else on the left, that's yellow, and everything else on the top is yellow.
I'm visualizing
All right.
as Councilmember Brower said.
Square it off, as Ben said. Square it off. Okay.
And the additional pavers at the top, the one on the right has more pavers on top of the top than the one on the left?
I guess I'm a little confused. Was the applicant asking for the paver picture on the left?
They're asking for
right.
the one, I believe, on.
On the-
And the one on the right? I'm okay with the one on the right, just extending yellow from the pavers on the left down and the pavers
The
on the top.
driveway and front and above the pool to the property line.
Correct.
Everybody know? Okay. Any further discussion from the council here before we? Okay, is there a motion to approve the variance as amended here this morning?
I'll move to adopt Resolution 21-45 with the amended changes.
Good. And moved and seconded? Discussion? Objection? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Good luck with your project. Next item is the special exception for consumption on premises and video arcade for adults, SCZ 2021-0050. This is to approve or conditions or deny SCZ 2021-0005, a special exception for consumption of premises, that's a 2 COP, and video arcade for adults. Jason.
Morning, Jason Green, Community Development. I'll try to walk through this. There's two issues on this. There's the consumption on premise. And there's also the request for the arcade. They're both, our direction to the applicant, required a special exception. That's why they're both before you today. We have really kind of tried to give you some background on both, but really made a recommendation based on the consumption on premise only, without getting the benefit of your input before this, obviously, because we need you to make a determination if they're even allowed to do that use. That's the second part to it. So yes, basically the applicant is requesting an arcade, but also a consumption of premise, a COP per our code, a sale of beer and wine, and it would be a deviation from 34-1264, which has to do with the separation between parks and schools and that sort of thing, the consumption on premise. We're also planning on doing retail, but that is a permitted use in that downtown zoning district. Some background on the property. On the property rolls around 1955. Several permits over the years, over the decades. The current applicant has brought the property in 2020. They've asked for that special exception for the consumption on premise. Again, it's going to be retail, serving of beer and wine only is what's being proposed, and actually the COP is required by our code for anything that's other than a restaurant. And again, I'm sorry, 185 Old St. So the applicant, the video arcade part is essentially adult arcade because there's consumption of alcohol in there, and it would, what kind of operating machines they are, but they would be adult, VO type machines. Town LDC is silent on that specific use. What we did do is looked at the Lee County's codes because they're very similar in some of these terms. Their term, they have a term for commercial recreation uses. They have arcades listed in there where ours don't. Basically verbatim, our code's the same as theirs verbatim, except for that last addition of the arcades. That's why we just try to bring that up in the staff report to point out the fact that this is potential use that the county allows, but we don't specifically.
Just on that point, does Lee County's code say adult video arcades or just say the word arcades?
There's the word arcades, and I could not find a definition for that. If there's a concern about the other type of adult arcades that I think has been the question, those are specifically listed in both codes as sexually oriented arcades, which is not what this is. Those are a whole nother code section, a whole nother regulations dealing with those, and business licensing and all that. So that is not what this is, and they could not do that. Violation of many different codes for that. There's not a definition specifically for the arcades. They just put that word in there and didn't define it. Unfortunately, both codes define arcade. The term arcade is defined, but it's usually talking about structures. Arcades and having posts and overhangs and stuff like that along. Doesn't do us any help with whether it's coin-operated type of machines. I don't think anybody does coin-operated anymore either. So again, the location is within 500 feet of Lynn Hall Park. It's also within 500 feet of some other uses that needs the deviation anyway. As you know, there's lots of restaurants and lots of other drinking facilities in that area. So the LPA recommendation can be found on page 6 in the staff report. LPA, we're in favor of the policy of town council to determine the proposed use. Adult arcade is a use that the town wants in the land development code. The LPA voted 5-0 to deny the use based on it not fitting within the town's uses. LPA did recommend approval with conditions for the 2 COP and no outdoor consumption. There's a little outdoor area in front of the front door that basically is not, they're recommending not to allow consumption there. It'd be entirely within the footprint of the building.
Say that again.
Yeah, go back a second.
Footprint of their property, there's a little area out
Say
front.
what the LPA did again.
They are in favor of the town determining whether this use is allowed. Recommend denial. Approval of the consumption on premise.
Well, that's split approval.
So they were not in favor of the use, but they're in favor of the COP?
They're in favor of the COP, correct. So they could do retail and they would serve beer and wine with that retail.
Without the arcade?
Without the arcade, correct.
They're also recommending that we look into whether to change the code, but not making a recommendation of how to change the code.
I believe the conversation was, now is not the time to determine that policy. That we question about that, and what does that look like? In a nutshell, I may have oversimplified that, but that's essentially what the.
Well, the applicant's here too.
Yes, the applicant's here.
We're gonna hear.
Jane's here too, so she wanted to chime in on that, but I think. So a recommendation of yes. So then the conditions being, findings on page 5 of the staff report, recommendation on page 6, which includes a condition of limiting the outdoor part of the alcohol consumption to maintain it with the structure itself. In the staff also recommend approval of the on premise.
Mayor, Mr. Green started quicker than I could.
I'm sorry.
When he finishes, you need to close any ex parte communication.
I'm finished.
Anything else, Jason?
No, that's it. I can walk through the conditions if you want once we get to that point. Those as
Questions at this point for Mr. Green? Oh, are you back?
Yes, sir.
Go around. Ex parte communications. Anything, Dan?
I've driven by it several times.
Yes, Mayor.
I've received an email opposing the exception for the arcade.
I believe I may have had an email come across, but other than that, no.
I had an email in opposition.
An email, that's all part of the public record, though.
We all got the same email. Okay. All right. We'll hear from the applicant and the applicant's attorney, Mr. Brandt.
Good morning, Robert Durant, on behalf of the applicant, who's also here.
Yes.
Understanding this was approved by staff with a couple conditions which we didn't have a problem with. With regard to the LPA, they didn't want to set policy. They were referring to you folks to decide whether or not this was going to be an accepted use. We have a short presentation. May family has owned the building next door since the 70s, I believe, and history of that. And she was brought up, and this is Susan, she was brought up on the beach, serves on the advisory committee for traffic.
Public safety.
Public safety. So this is right next door to the property they bought. This is the property that they've owned for years and established as a ladies' store. Family, they bought it in 1975. They grew up there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Up there.
Which one of you is that?
This is the inside of the store that they currently own, next door to where we're proposing the arcade. More pictures of the store inside, so you can see their top-level retail. That's the intention of the building next door. Those men of you that haven't been in this, mostly women's clothing. Susie and her mother, Evelyn May. I don't know the dog's name, but Zoe. This is the store in question. Bought it at 185 San Carlos Boulevard. You can see it's kind of wedged in. In my being here 30, 40 years, it's been a number of different things, from pawn shop to seashell sold and various different things. This is the look down to the each end of Old San Carlos, and I believe you got your email from the gentleman that has the building with the little blue peak on the left. He's got a competitive clothing store, my client, so apparently he rents there, and he's opposed to anything new for the area. This is a picture of the inside, what the inside will look like. Pictures of other gaming facilities that we were trying to mimic. And we did speak with the sheriff, the captain down here, who had no objection to the arcade, that if you had any questions, you could contact him. We asked him to come and be here today, but they prefer not to get involved. His voice was that he didn't object. Yep. I don't know how I turned that one around.
The jackpot?
Yeah. These are other places in the area, just down the street on San Carlos. Inside, we propose it to look like, which is what these places look like. That's the difference between what you might consider a kid's arcade like Dave & Buster's as opposed to an adult arcade. I hesitate to use that word adult because I didn't want all these illusions, some sort of whatever, but this is what it'll propose to look like inside. Definitely all first class. Paradise 777 arcade. Pictures of arcades, they look like inside. Conclusion. Something new and different to the beach. It fits in with the comprehensive plan as far as being something new and different and exciting. Otherwise, back to another t-shirt shop, potentially, or clothing store. Alcohol sales in the area, almost completely around this location. Pedestrian friendly. So we'd ask for approval, and again, the staff has approved it with conditions which we have no problem with. We don't intend any outside seating. All inside. No LPA said basically they were passing on making the decision whether or not you want to add this to your list of approved businesses on Fort Myers Beach. Questions? All for the applicant?
Questions? I have a question. That type of gaming, gambling, whatever you want to call it, what are the payoffs? I mean, are there prizes? Is that the way it works? I mean,
You get gift certificates or
Through the-
animal,
through
stuffed
your-
animals, whatever the law
the other
allows.
stores?
This is all regulated by the state of Florida, so whatever
I'm
the
just
law-
curious. I'm not familiar
I've
with
never
it.
been in one either, so.
It's actually,
Suzanne, identify yourself, please.
Sorry?
Identify yourself for the
I'm
record.
Suzanne Bayhan, and I'm the applicant. Actually, I think the best term for this is electronic gaming. The adult part of it is very misleading in what we're trying to accomplish here. I believe it falls under the family amusement laws in in Florida regarding, it would be like a prize. They would have to buy a ticket voucher in the machine, and then if they won something, it would be in the form of a prize. And that could be whatever,
Where would they redeem those prizes?
at our location.
At your location? They'd be
Yes.
there. Okay. Right.
I was trying to show in the presentation that there's multiple of these around the beach, and they're very well maintained. They're very sophisticated, classy establishments. Many people that I know, including all these individuals here that are in support of it, go to those establishments. There's not problems with them. There's not crime. Security is always in place, well contained within the actual footprint of the facility. Nothing is outside. And I just think it would be a nice new entertainment option for the beach. Don't have too many, something new. Questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Suzanne, thank you for being here this morning. How many machines are you envisioning for this particular property?
5, maybe.
5 or 10, that's all?
Well, it's going to also be a beer and wine bar, and there's going to be a retail portion.
Do you object to putting that as a condition of approval as to how many machines you'd have? But you don't envision, you don't have a business model that tells you how many machines you need to make this work financially?
I mean, deal, and it's just an addition to the beer and wine consumption.
It's a pretty big issue. I mean, so you do have a plan, I mean, is it proprietary, you don't want to disclose it, or how many
Yes.
machines, you don't want to disclose it? It could be more than 10.
No, I don't have a problem with limiting it 5 to 10. What I'm saying is proprietary is my business plan.
So the discussion of jackpots and prizes, you can't discuss that at this
I
point?
can give you a basic idea. I mean, yes, I'd be happy to discuss that. I mean, whatever the limitations that the council would like to put on this, I'm fine with.
I'm going to defer to our town attorney here in a second, but as I research
In
this,
other facilities, not to interrupt you, but in other facilities, just they do have jackpot limitations. It's usually $5,000 to $10,000 in the form of a gift card, like a Visa gift card.
and Florida law also discusses that these have to be games of skill as opposed to games of chance. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Describe how they're games of skill.
Whereas, I mean, I think what they mean by that is game of skill would be something where like a player could hit the button to stop the reels. Whereas if you just hit it and it stops on its own, and that it was my understanding. That may be very layman, I'm not sure.
This isn't necessarily fair to you, but it is what we have to work with, and that's the public record. And as you do some research into these particular machines and these establishments, for example, the city of Jacksonville, they banned them. They determined they were a public nuisance, and they banned them for their city. I mean, did you look at some of the challenges that they faced, and how do you plan to mitigate those types of challenges?
As far as what specifically are you concerned
There was
about?
criminal activity, it was
I
vagrants.
live on the back of that building,
Okay.
and I'm hiring security. And it's
But-
going to be contained within the building, not be under 21 years of age in there. Going to be windows, the sliders in the front will be tinted so that families passing by and that sort of thing will not have a moral issue with it because they're not actively seeing if they have whatever, which I'm also concerned about. There will be surveillance cameras, there will be security, there will be all kinds of measures of mitigation for criminal activity.
Yeah,
I mean,
none of this was part of your presentation, that's why, yeah, I'm trying to flush some of this out. I have some additional questions. Can you talk about what the capital investment is you're going to put in this building? I guess you don't know how many machines yet, so you probably don't know. I mean, what's the investment you're going to make in renovating this building? Ballpark. If you can share that. We're trying to determine whether this is going to be, your store next to you looks like a beautiful store and but we want to, I personally want to make sure that this would be a significant investment, so it would be a nice facility. It's a key part of our entertainment
Well,
district.
each of the machines I would be purchasing on my own.
I understand that.
And they range between $5,000 and $10,000 a piece. And then the bar investment, renovation of the building, I mean, we're looking at $75,000 to $100,000 easy.
Helpful, thank you. May have more questions later, but.
I just wanted to jump in. With all due respect to the applicant, I don't think citing this issue in this forum is the appropriate way to go. Because if we grant a special exception for a use which is not in our code, we've basically added it to our code. And I think that the appropriate way to do this would be to, if the public wish was for us to add this to our code, that we do it in that fashion, that it be a code change and that the public would have an opportunity to come in. So I have a problem granting it in this fashion. It's kind of a backdoor way in, and it makes me feel quite uncomfortable, number one. Number two, and I say this because I want John to correct me if I'm wrong, I also did a little research on the issue, and I found that there was some case law that said once you add this use to your code, that there's a Florida Supreme Court case that says the state has preempted regulation of it. So basically, if we add this to our uses, we don't get to control it. It's another one of those issues that the state has preempted. Has that case been overturned, John?
Well, the state has preempted the area of determining what is what constitutes gambling and where it can take place.
Right. We wouldn't be able to.
So if ultimately the state determines that this is some type of gambling device, then it certainly would be preempted to the state. I think the issue that we're all dancing around is, and to Councilmember Adderholt's prior comments is does this constitute gambling? Or these, not games of chance versus games of skill. And, my understanding is that is a function of making that decision. It's a function of the sheriff's office and the state attorney's office. They're the ones who enforce that particular statutory provision because it is criminal in nature, and that the jurisdiction is vested with them. And they would have to make a determination, as I understand it, that it is or it isn't a game of chance versus a game of skill.
Case is Gretna Racing versus Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation, held that laws governing adult arcades are constitutionally authorized to be promulgated solely by the state legislature, thereby voided all county ordinances and other referendums enacted by the local agencies.
Like a preemption to me.
Yeah, it says all.
And
What year was that, Rex?
Didn't affect the ability to.
2017.
Passing the buck to the state, kind of what you want to do. the state regulated. All we're here to
No,
do.
I don't want the state to regulate it. I have little faith in the state's regulation of things. They are,
They only regulate the gambling aspect. The gambling is regulate the hours, the operation, the beer. They regulate the gambling aspect. In other words, you can't regulate the
the
gambling.
way I read this, we wouldn't be able to say it's limited to 5 to 10 machines.
I think you would. I
That's,
think you would.
that's-
It's
that's
the
not-
type of machine you wouldn't be able to regulate.
so again, all this is unclear. To me, this is too broad of an issue that we should be dealing with in a special exception form. This should be dealt with in whether we're going to amend our code to allow this for all rather than just one. It's just a backdoor way in, and I don't feel comfortable with it.
Vice Mayor, if I may, that's precisely the concern and statements of the LPA when they elected to recommend denial of this component of this application.
And I guess
Exactly what you stated.
I would go on to say then, I don't see why you would then grant the special exception about alcohol when we don't know what's going to be attached to it. So the two should go together, so I wouldn't feel comfortable voting for either aspect.
So just so I'm understanding this, John, based on what Madam Vice Mayor just said, if it was approved the way it is in front of us now, and the state were to change their determination of what adult video arcade is versus gambling, we would have no say in that?
If they included this particular, yes, they would will have preempted the entire area.
I don't know that I'd be 100% comfortable with that either.
I don't know that that's entirely true. It deals with the type of machine, whether or not it's gambling or not gambling, with the rest of the aspects. Regulate the type of machine and regulate the business. That's why we're here. Can't get I understand Vice Mayor's argument about, but that's what we were told to do, to come in here and ask for a special exception. That's what staff told us to do. So I don't think because you pass one, you have to pass another. It depends on the location. It depends on a lot of different things, not just a blanket waiver. This is a legitimate use. All through Lee County, we seem to be fine with it. The county seems to be fine with the state regulating the gambling aspect. Something you don't have to worry about. It's up to the state. I would think you would welcome that, but anyway, it's a legitimate use, legal use. Staff has already indicated approval. LPA passed on it because they didn't want to set policy. I understand that. So, if we can't get the arcade at this time, we want the 2C.
I have a more specific question, I guess. So, assuming this was approved, and as I understand it would be gift cards or Visa, would those be local business cards, or are they just a general Visa card? So if someone won $5,000, it would
I
be?
could specify them however.
I guess my specific question would be, if you were granted that use to be able to hand out the gift cards, and the state changed it to now that doesn't have to be gift cards, it would be cash, we no longer have a say in that. Could we still restrict it to just the gift cards, or would you have the freedom to be able to hand out cash so it becomes regular gambling? I'm asking in general, if someone has that answer.
I would say the state would regulate. I do like the idea about giving out local gifts.
A store right
Perhaps
next
we
door.
could incorporate that into the
How would
policy.
you get-
If the state's going to shut it down, they're going to shut it down until. They're not going to say you can't do. Click it back and forth.
And that's where my concern comes in.
Shut it down, they're going to have to shut it down statewide.
If they open it up, they're opening it up statewide. That's the bigger issue that I have with it. I would, just kind of keep it moving along, I guess. I would be in favor of following the LPA's recommendations.
Just a point of order. This is the period of this where we're asking questions of the applicant, right?
Yes.
We're not debating among ourselves. We're asking questions of the applicant.
Theoretically, yes.
Just a point of order.
Okay. Any more questions for the applicant? I have a question. And Bob or Suzanne can answer. Are you trying to open up an arcade or you're trying to open up a bar? Which one are you really trying to do?
Bar,
You're trying to open up a bar
sir.
that has an ancillary use of
Yes.
these arcade machines,
Yes.
bring people in and so forth.
As if I could, as
You-
far
you-
as the vice mayor's concerns about the arcade aspect or electronic gaming, I mean, if that's something that needs to go be discussed further, I'm fine with that. But I've owned this building for a year and I need to get it open. It's not producing revenue. And I am a business owner here on the beach. So if you don't want the arcade, that's fine. But I would appreciate getting the option for a sophisticated wine bar opened. Retail
I'll tell you,
aspect.
there's not, this is not without precedence, gambling by the seashore. There's probably 1 million square feet of it up in Atlantic City where,
All over the
except the
county.
difference is there that, gamble and they give you the booze. In your place, they'd be, playing the machines and they'd have to buy their own booze, which is fine. Did you have a question?
Just while you're up here, you just walk us through then, if we happen to follow the vice mayor's strategic plan of having a broader review of the adult video arcade, which I happen to think is a good idea. Respect to the wine bar, would you just discuss a little bit what you're thinking about or envisioning for a wine bar? I don't think we have I guess Charlie's has a sort of a wine bar, but there's not really many wine bars on the island. And that's an innovative business model. Could you talk a little bit more about what you have in mind for that?
It actually is on the island. Bar, the beer and wine bar, which is, what's the avenue that's? High Street. Okay, it's right there on the beach. That is just an example of a beer and wine usage. And then we've got Shamrocks as well.
No, I'm asking what your plan is for this store, if you open a
Oh, I'm
wine bar.
sorry.
Yeah, no.
My plan for the store is to open, it's a very nice, sophisticated wine, and there will be an option as well, bar that locals can come and enjoy. There will be retail aspects to it.
What do you mean by that? And would you be
So-
serving any food or hors d'oeuvres?
No, sir.
Okay.
No,
I'm not saying
because-
that's a bad thing, I'm just asking, yeah.
No, there's just not a lot of variety when it comes to more exquisite wines and beers on the beach. And I think a more sophisticated option would be nice to have.
That's great, but you say you may mix a retail piece to it, with it?
Well, just as far as like a lot of these beer and wine locations have their own, I don't know what you call it, their T-shirts and the shirt,
Bag.
Kind of just
swag,
push,
thank you.
I got you. All
That
right.
would be the retail aspect. And there might be like a small corner of some more sophisticated women's wear and men's wear.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further questions for the apps? Thank you for now. Okay, we'll bring it back to the council and we'll get a consensus going here. Vice Mayor has proposed that this adult entertainment is not addressed too much in the codes, right? It's not addressed at all in the codes right now. Warrants further investigation. I'm hearing from the rest of the group that you sort of agree with that. I myself am also in agreement of that. So the question is then whether to grant the question is to defer that part of it and schedule it for future hearings with the LPA and staff and so forth and discuss that aspect of it. And then today to decide whether to grant a special exception for the COP license there to serve beer and wine. That's what's before us, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
I think you've characterized it well. I just was going to suggest also having the Public Safety Committee look at it as well for different reasons, in addition to the LPA.
On the gaming side?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's fine. Yes, sir.
I believe I heard you open the public meeting, but staff has indicated that they're not quite sure.
Yeah, you're right. I have not. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to address this issue? Some folks here, anybody want to speak on this? Jane, come on up. Come on up.
Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
As a member of the LPA, I wasn't supposed to be here for these cases, so I didn't bring my notes. But, you know, our concern was basically that we try to represent ourselves as a family island. And we didn't know how this fit in. And we, you know, observed that just over the bridge, there was a Casino 777 just over the bridge, went out of business. Just over the bridge on the other side is Fantasies. And, you know, by opening that door, are we opening different aspect of something that might not be a family idea? Not that everything has to be family, but, you know, we can take our kids into all the bars as long as they don't sit at the bars so that they can be with families while they're traveling and stuff like that. We just wondered if this was something that really fit into our island. I mean, over the bridge, you know, whatever, but we didn't want to make that position, basically, and that was really all the LPA said. And, you know, we felt like if they could support line with retail, that we would approve that portion so that they could move on. If so intended to, you know, vote that way, but we didn't want to completely shut them down to not be able to have that considered.
Anyone else from the public that wishes to speak? Being none, we'll close that and bring it back to the council again. That concern is always a concern of ours, the family island aspect of this. I would say in this particular case, though, just from what I'm hearing today, is that this applicant has a vested interest in keeping it different than the ones that are across the bridge, since she's already in business right next door and has been an island resident for years and years and years. But that being said, we'll discuss this further. So, Bill, did you want to?
Yes. Yeah, no, I think I can see why the applicant wants this. I mean, it seems like an interesting business model where people go in and they'll pay money to put a voucher in the machine, and then whatever they win, they have control over how that's spent. So it could be a voucher, and get a gift card for their store, so the money never leaves. It's an interesting business proposal. Just from the presentation, though, it comes to me that this is really not a very well-defined thing, because it was titled as an adult video arcade, electronic gaming, and adult gaming all in the same presentation. It's like we're really working in a pretty gray area about what we're trying to define. I would agree that this would set an unfortunate precedent that we just wouldn't have a lot of control over. I think that if we probably try to bring this through the normal course, through the committees, the LPA as an ordinance, my feeling is it would probably get a lot of opposition. Because when we moved here 11, 12 years ago, they were essentially like casinos. They were all over the place. The state then passed a law eliminating them. I think they limited, like they were saying, whether it's a game of chance and then how the payouts happened. There's nothing to say the state wouldn't change that back. If you allow something, I think that you are putting something else in state control and taking it out of our local control. For that reason, I would not support granting a special exemption on this one case just because the president is sets. Although I can see why the applicant wants it. As far as the COP, I think that the reality is there are plenty of places to get a drink around town closer to the park than this is. And I don't particularly have a problem granting a COP in the central business district they were asking for.
I hear the vice mayor's concerns about process on this. I think this is something that needs a lot deeper look with respect to the adult video gaming. Very encouraged that the petitioner has a very successful business on the island and obviously cares about the island. And I don't certainly question their motives. And I'm very intrigued by this business proposal with respect to a wine bar. And I also would support the 2COP approval as well, so she can open that business as soon as possible. And but again, I think the adult video arcade process certainly warrants a deeper look.
Ms. Mayor, you've already said your piece.
I just have a question. Because this is all under the same resolution, John, we could legally pass one and not the other?
Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
If staff felt the need to sever the two resolution, the applications, two separate resolutions, we could. But as it's currently written, I believe it provides for the flexibility to approve or deny both items in one resolution.
Thank you. Okay, so that appears to be the question before us this morning. So I think we're all in agreement that the video arcade aspect of it is warranting a little further look and discussion through the committees. Well, then the question is whether there's a motion to approve the 2COP license for that location. Or deny. Is there a motion? Okay, for discussion. Okay, Jim, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2COP license for petition SEZ 202-10050, special exemption for consumption on premises 2COP without the video arcade provision.
Good. Yes, sir.
I know that we kind of, as set forth in the staff report and recommended by the LPA, kind of state the record that it's consistent, that it meets the criteria for the COP, not for the interpretation as recommended by staff and the LPA.
I include the addendum by our town attorney in my motion.
Second?
Seconded for discussion.
Okay, it's been seconded for discussion. Discussion. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, I think we pretty much, talked about the COP, I think, in the area. I don't really have a particular problem with it, just because I said it's an area where that kind of use is very common. And I think that encouraging the use into, I don't have a particular.
Any other further discussion?
Yes.
Sure, go ahead.
I would just say that I don't want to keep you from opening your business. That's not what this is about. But we have taken away half of your business plan or a portion of your business plan, and as Mr. Adderholt has asked questions about what is your business plan, once we've removed a portion of it, that means that we would need to modify that, and I guess I just feel the need to know what is the rest of the business plan if we don't go ahead with that portion. So I don't feel comfortable doing the COP. That's not to say that I wouldn't grant it a month from now, hearing what the rest of your modified business plan is without the video arcade aspect. So I just don't feel comfortable voting for it today without knowing what the total business plan is for the property.
Well, the applicant did state that this would allow them to open their business.
Right, but what other uses are they going to include with it then to take the place of this lost income?
She did say that she was going to her goods in there and sell it.
Right, but we don't know what other uses might be involved. It's just, to me, there are unanswered questions that I'm not sure she could even answer because part of her plan has been taken from her.
Now, is it our goal to make sure that her business plan makes sense from a business standpoint?
I'm just talking about the kinds of questions that Mr. Adderholt was asking earlier.
Based on what John, our attorney, has told us, that we're within our right to do what they're asking and separate these out under two different items. I share what Madam Vice Mayor is saying. Whether my opinion is going to change on the COP a month from now doesn't seem to make sense for me to hold it up. If we're going to talk about it, I agree with the adult gaming. I think that needs to go back to the drawing board and be discussed. But based on the information I've been given, I would be okay with moving forward with the COP.
Okay. So the motion is to grant the special exception for the 2 COP license on premises, and disregard the video arcade for adults for now.
I ask for a clarification of the motion. Does it include the condition suggested by, I believe it was suggested by the LPA that the COP not be outside?
I would like to include that, yes.
Not be outside.
I never heard the petitioner reference that. I don't, but I'm comfortable with including that condition, Madam Vice Mayor.
I'm just looking to see if it was on the resolution. It is. It is. It's in there.
Okay, so it doesn't need to be modified.
Doesn't need to be modified.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. It's been discussed. Objection to the motion.
I'm going to withdraw my objection.
Motion carries unanimously.
Don't need to do a roll call on.
I don't think so. John?
It's a
No.
special exception.
Ordinances, certain types of resolutions, but not necessarily this one.
Well, it's unanimous anyhow. Good luck.
All right.
Want to take a 10-minute break here and
Sure.
get something to drink? Okay. We'll break for 10 minutes. Okay, it's 10:50, according to the big clock. We'll resume our meeting here. And the next item, we'll move into the administrative agenda. The next item is North Estero Phase 2, Part 2 staging. It's to extend the staging area agreement with Michelin Star Construction Company for use of town control parking lot number 3 as a staging area during the construction from June 18th of 2021 to December 31st of 2021 with FDOT's approval. Is there a motion to approve this?
I'll move to approve it.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion?
I would, Mr. Mayor, and I don't want to put the town manager on the spot, but we had a conversation, I think, last week. There's been some concern by our residents about people with parking passes not being able to park in this area. Obviously, we need to do this because we're trying to complete the Renaissance as well as all the water and stormwater projects, so the staging's critical. But I think, Mr. Town Manager, you said something about the town, I think this was Councilor Aller's original idea, but the town's parking on the town, in the town spots is now open for business. Is that, did you tell me, did that happen this Saturday, or with opening up 35 additional spots? I don't want to misquote you, I can't remember.
Yes, there's the 35 spots here for the weekends at Town Hall are open.
35 spots now open at Town Hall, and if you have a town pass, can you park here then for no additional
Yes,
charge?
we're honoring the pass here at Town Hall.
We are honoring the pass, so that opens up 35 additional spots, which should help. I know it's not right in the entertainment district, but it's.
Nice walk. I saw someone running down there a couple of months ago from Town Hall down to.
But it might be helpful, because I have a number of constituents ask me about the staging area. Could you just a couple sentences explain why this is critical to the island's development, that we continue to use this staging area?
Well, clearly, the closer the proximity of the staging area to the construction facilitates the construction. So the further away, it slows down the project. Of course, our goal is to try to get through this project and get it complete by before April, which is our current deadline. And of course, there's other construction projects in that area, so we're all trying to get at it, get our part done and get out of each other's way. So this is not only critical to the narrow vision of the town's water and stormwater project, in that area, but also to the domino effect it has on other projects in that area that are needing us to be out of their way when their heavy transportation deliveries will start. So I believe that while it's an inconvenience, people, I believe, are seeing the staging area a lot, but they're also seeing the other construction through the other lots that are temporarily being closed while that construction is going on through that lot. It's closed for a couple of weeks and it reopens, and getting confused between the two issues.
Christy Corr, do you have something to add to this?
Mr. Corey, for the record, that's what I wanted to state also, is that while we are using one lot for the staging, we are closing the lots next to it to set the stormwater and the water. So at one point, we did have 2 closed at one time, and that's when we started even getting calls. So we tried to get that open and get moving. So there is construction going on throughout the lots, setting the stormwater to the bay and then the water, but they get reopened. So we are only using the one lot for storage, for staging.
The second one's back open again.
Yes, correct.
Thank you, Christy.
See, real quick while you're there, can I ask you just a quick question? I was reading through that and I saw some of the emails that the FDOT said they would extend it until the 31st. Is there any reason the contractors have given us that they aren't going to be able to make that deadline?
The project deadline is April.
But the staging area that they're going to require, so we aren't going to have to go back to FDOT to ask for redo all of what we've already done.
Well, we're in our own subtle way trying to keep the contractor's feet to the fire by not giving him all the way to April, because if you give him all the way to April today, it may take all the way to April. So by giving him this interim date of the end of the year, and hopefully we can work together to get as much done as possible. And maybe he may need February or March or whatever, rather than stretch it out to April. So we'll see where he is at the end of the year, and we'll adjust accordingly. I think that's the best way to approach it.
All right, so it's been moved, seconded, and discussed to extend the staging area agreement with Mitchell and Stark Construction. Is there any objection to the motion? Motion carries unanimously. Next item is Community Development Professional Services. This is to approve supplemental task authorization to develop workforce housing policies and programs, as well as comprehensive plan LDC coordination with Sarah Probst of Axis Infrastructure for a not to exceed amount of $26,880 and authorize the town manager to execute required documentation. Is there a motion to approve this supplemental task authorization?
I'm happy to move to approve the supplemental task authorization. I've worked extensively with Sarah one-on-one about different projects in the past, and her work ethic is amazing. Her knowledge is amazing. I was thrilled when I saw her name attached to this. So I move to approve the supplemental task authorization.
Well, then I'm happy to second the motion. We're trying to keep everybody happy.
Yes, it doesn't need a third.
Discussion?
I do have a question for the town manager. We have hired a consultant to help with the comprehensive plan and the LDC rewrite, the comprehensive plan rewrite. Is that not included in their contract? Again, I've got no beef with Sarah, but I'm like, we've hired someone to do this already. Is that?
All right, well, so we have a firm who's looking at the LDC and whatever, and the comprehensive plan. Since then, since that scope has been developed and that consultant's been brought on board, the council has discussed and wanted to look in opportunities for affordable housing here on the island. And traditionally, that's done via where the government has a lot of land. Therefore, the government would contribute the land to the project, and it would result in a workforce housing. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of land, so we have to find unique and innovative approaches, and that's why we need someone like Sarah, who's familiar with our land development code, familiar with how the properties on the island are being utilized, and can give you all some specific guidance applicable to Fort Myers Beach on how you can perhaps create opportunities for workforce housing when different applicants and through different potential amendments to the land development code and the LDC. So we thought that this was a good approach, and I will say that if Sarah were not available and it was just a ICP planner who didn't have knowledge of our land development code and didn't have experience with the town, I wouldn't be as supportive of this concept, but because it's her and she has that knowledge and knows how the properties are being utilized so that she can explore unique ways of perhaps creating workforce housing that someone who's just familiar with planning in general would not know, is the reason why we're recommending this.
If I could give a shorter version of what Roger just said.
Please.
I believe that what Sarah is doing is more than what's just in the LDC. I believe our contract with the guys reviewing the LDC is narrow to the LDC. This is to develop policies and programs in addition to the LDC changes, because just changing the LDC is not enough to make this work. There's going to be a lot more besides LDC changes that need to be considered.
I appreciate the clarification, and in that good spirit, is the scope broad enough for Sarah to also include in her portfolio? As I talked to some of the larger employers on the island, one of their biggest challenges with workforce is not just housing, but parking for those folks who come off island. Could we include in her scope, as we try to address workforce issues, parking for those employees who choose to drive to our island or off the island, off over the other side of the bridge? Could we just broaden to solve the workforce problem issue as opposed to just providing housing? There may be other solutions, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Could we just keep it broad enough to include the parking dynamic? Because it seems to me a lot of the large employers are very concerned. as to where their employees are going to park, and I just wondered if that could be included in her scope. Everybody comfortable with that?
I'm having a hard time seeing how it's really consistent with the scope that we're talking about now, because specifically about housing. I mean, parking, you can encourage parking or not. That seems to be a separate issue. So I understand what you're saying. Personally, I don't think, though, that you can encourage parking without encouraging traffic. And when we have talked about having traffic on a future discussion, I would certainly agree to include parking and traffic in the same discussion.
Okay, I mean, it just seems to me a lot of our challenges with workforce is parking. And again, I prefer that parking, some of the solutions to be on the other side of the bridge to not create additional traffic issues. And that is possibly a different discussion. I just want to think just broader of addressing workforce issues than just providing government housing or not-for-profit housing. I just think that there's a potentially broader solution, but maybe that's for another day.
And I understand that too, but I also tell you, I think that having delved into this a little bit, it is a very broad topic anyway. Many different angles to it. But I think that making it broader would make it further complicated and harder to execute.
Okay.
Councilman, I don't know if you're hearing the same rumors that I am, but there is a lot of discussion going on right now about possibilities on the other side of the bridge. So,
I'm hearing some wonderful rumors about those.
Yeah.
I want to encourage them as best we can.
Yeah, so I mean, if anything like that in fact is in the works, then it'll certainly help our situation. Okay, so it's been moved, second, and discussed. Any objection to the motion? Motion carries unanimously with Sarah coming on board.
Back on board.
Back on board. Okay, the next item is the Sterile Boulevard landscaping contract. This is to approve and authorize the town manager to execute a piggyback contract with P&T Lawn and Tractor Service, Inc., with a not-to-exceed price of $100,000 for a Sterile Boulevard landscaping of perennial peanut and services related to the county's contract RFP 170225 KLC, landscape maintenance and mowing for DOT.
Mr. Mayor,
Sir.
let me just clarify, that while the contract, the Lee County's contract is labeled or entitled landscape maintenance and mowing, it also includes installation of landscaping. I just want to make that clear for everyone. That's why we're piggybacking on this contract.
I'll move to approve and authorize the town manager to execute said piggyback contract.
Second?
Second for discussion, but
Go ahead.
I'll second
Owe me a Coke, owe me a
for
Coke.
discussion, but I do have some modifications I'd like to make to this.
Okay, it's been seconded. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, now in the research, I understand that the perennial peanut is it's a ground cover that really requires mowing maybe once a year. It's not a native. And there are other options. There is a frog fruit, which is also a ground cover, which is native and host to 3 different butterfly species. There's sunshine mimosa, which is again a native plant that can be used as a ground cover. So the one modification I would like to make to this is it not just to put peanut throughout, but to either use different types of plants in different stretches of the median so that they have different colored flowers, different times, be more visual interest, and would go more towards native and not just Florida friendly.
I have no opposition to amending to allow them the discretion to use the most appropriate perennial for each area, because certain areas may be shadier than others, and my experience is I've had more trouble growing the mimosa because it takes more sunlight, et cetera. So the professionals certainly decide what might be more appropriate.
So I think that I'd like to still be in the loop on that, because the perennial peanut is pretty readily available, more so than the other ones. And I think that the stretch that we're talking about along that, between the sidewalk and the bicycle path, if you will, through that area, is pretty sunny.
Very sunny. What's the cost involved? Are they similar costs?
they don't really know the costs or the availability of the plants.
Yeah, we haven't looked into that yet, but clearly, this contract is approved, we'll work with the vendor to determine, not only the cost, but the best time to plant, et cetera. So, variety of issues to be determined.
This is also for one stretch. This is almost like a pilot program.
Well, so the part of the project, the Sterile Boulevard project that the county is sort of labeled fully complete is the area to Publix. That's where we'll be initially concentrating.
I will say I had to look it up. I am no expert of the perennial peanut. It definitely looks like a very hardy plant. But I guess my confusion is I thought that although I understand it only has to get mowed and it's very low maintenance, I thought that we had had some discussions about trying to not necessarily mimic or do exactly what's done on the north end of Estero on that segment between the roadway and the sidewalk. But this seems like this would be just very low, crabgrassy looking plant that is very hardy to walk on and ride your bike on, but it's not addressing the issue that we're going to have with people just darting out off the sidewalk into the street. Personally, I would like to see a little bit more structure like we have on North Estero. I don't know if that's possible within the budget that we have to work with.
That's not a budgetary issue, Councilman. The issue is that the openings that we have, the areas for planting, between here and Publix are somewhat limited for that type of landscaping, unfortunately. So you're somewhat limited to a ground cover of one type or another. The area south of Publix will offer a lot more opportunities with regard to that in terms of bushes and trees and other things. But right now, in this particular area, it looks like it's going to be ground cover of one type or another.
Well, and I understand that with the tree part, I guess, and I'm not talking about anything that's 4, 5, 6 feet tall, but something that's even like just below your knee or something that just hides the sidewalk a little bit.
Yeah, I hear you. All I can do is encourage you to refresh your memory and drive that area is on Wednesdays and Thursdays when all the garbage bins are out there. There people are putting their bins out there and all of that. And then if we take away that area sort of being flat for them to have bins on, then they're going to be either on the sidewalk or the road or whatever. So we have to be careful about that. We'll look and see if there's an opportunity to put something more substantial in, we will.
Dan, I don't have any disagreement with you. It's just, as Roger said, I think this
space.
area.
Sure. I was just hoping for, after doing my research on it, it just seemed very bland and plain to me.
Actually,
So, and the pictures that were included in the, looking it up, I was hoping for something with a little more color. I guess it's going to be a nice,
part of it that
beautiful
grows
road.
in my yard has yellow blooms on them that it's gorgeous. So it may
Maybe
be
I'm
that you
being
saw some
nitpicky.
unfortunate photographs. Again, I
Anything's
don't
better.
disagree with certain areas if we can put in something taller to discourage pedestrians, especially closer to downtown. Don't disagree with that.
And I'm all in favor of Councilmember Veach's sort of looking at something maybe a little more native, something that's the same resilience that perennial peanut has.
Your native plants flowering, Councilor Veach?
I haven't been down to the Whale in a while to see the garden down there,
But are the native plants you're proposing, are they flowering?
I would assume so. This is kind of the flowering time of year for. I don't know these particular ones if they're flowering right now.
Just love all this horticultural discussion.
I'm learning so much.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve and authorize the town manager to execute the contract. P&T Lawn and Tractor Service. It's been discussed. Any objection? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, the next item is D, Roar Offshore, and this is to change their special event permit. We happen to have the Roar Offshore folks here. Why don't you roar on up here and come on up. There you go. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah.
Having us.
How you doing? You're in the home stretch here, huh?
You can see the green flag.
If only we
could get to the checkered flag.
Tell us what you have here.
So
as you guys know, we have no
You
paid
better
gate.
say their names for the record.
Oh, sorry. Tim Hill with Roar Offshore Fort Myers Beach Powerboat Races.
Cynthia Hill with Roar Offshore Powerboat Races.
Good, thank you.
So with no paid gate for this event, we try to look for ways that we can continue to raise money to support the event and also our local charities. One of those is a VIP area that we have sponsor obligations to for comped VIP tickets and then to also sell VIP tickets for the races. We tried with many of our sponsors to locate a spot on the beach that we could utilize a tent to have this VIP area. Most of our larger sponsors, they were utilizing their space to its fullest capacity. So we were able to find a great location right at the start-finish line at Beach Bar, which has been gracious enough to allow an extension of premise for their location and allow us to set up a VIP tent, which Cindy has coordinated with Turtle Time and gotten the appropriate approvals from Eve, from the Lee County Sheriff's Office, from the Fire Department, and also from EMS. So it was a little last minute. We tried to get it on to the September 18th docket, weren't able to do that, which is why we're here today requesting that approval.
Just want to thank you. It was last minute, and at the time, if we did not have the VIP tent, we would not have raised enough sponsorship money to cover the race as in 2019. Fortunately, with the VIP tent, we are 100% sponsored. Money will not come out of our own pockets this year, yay, to put on the event. So thank you for the last minute. I know it's extra work added onto your time and also energy. Just want to thank you guys. Thank everyone here.
Thank you. Anybody have any questions for the folks while they're here? No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the change to the special event permit?
I'll move to approve the amendment to the special event permit and thank Patty Prevost for all her extra work I'm sure she's been doing on this.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Any objection? The motion carries unanimously. Next item is the Christmas Tree Festival at Fort Myers Beach Women's Club for December 10th and December 11th of 2021. This is a special event, Christmas Tree Festival at Fort Myers Beach Women's Club. I see some representatives. Would you ladies like to come up here and speak? Morning.
Good morning, Council. Megan Allers, Board Member of the Fort Myers Beach Women's Club.
Mary Torgerson, member of the.
And we're actually presenting the Christmas Tree Festival permit today, as well as our Putt and Pub. So I kind of go hand in hand. Yeah, next on the list. So
Yeah, good.
this is our 4th annual Christmas Tree Festival this year. Really, nothing has changed in our format whatsoever. Still a 2-day event, a VIP happy hour on Friday evening with some live music that we've submitted the 500-foot letter for. Starts our Christmas tree auction that evening, continues on to Saturday where we have a vendor market during the day, and our chili cook-off at night, which we invite you all to participate in as well.
That means make chili.
It means, and eat the chili, doesn't matter. But are there any questions on the permit that we submitted for this event?
Good. Questions?
I
Ladies?
guess I don't have a question. I'd just like to say thank you guys for doing this. It's become quite an annual tradition people look forward to, and I know you have to put a lot of hard work into it, and I appreciate it.
I appreciate that, Roxanne. Thank you.
I'll do that, and we'll pray for a little cooler weather this year, for keep it cool. Any other questions about this item for the ladies? Comments? Complaints? No, just, okay, thank you. We'll hang around for the next one, and
We need a motion on this one, so
please.
I'll make a motion that we approve this special event for the Christmas Tree Festival at the Fort Myers Beach Women's Club.
Second.
Moved and seconded twice. Any further discussion? Any objection? Carries unanimously. And now we'll move into item F, which is the 11th Annual Putt and Pub Crawl. This is a special event. It's the annual Putt and Pub Crawl.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll just go ahead and move to approve the special event permit.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. Discussion? Objection?
I do think for discussion purposes, we would be remiss if we didn't ask the petitioners to just describe a little bit as to how the public can get involved in the Putt and Pub crawl.
Well, as soon as we have approval, we'll have online or applications. They're in teams of 4. As you may or may not know, this was started 11 years ago by Paul and Larry Kiker. It's gone on to now we benefit 10 nonprofits every year. But so yes, as soon as we have approval, we'll have applications online, teams of 4. There's always an award for best dressed, best score, worst score. Yeah, it's 60 teams. It's a max of 60 teams.
60.
So it's a little, people get in there and our team's always been about getting the best dress score. We never get the high score. It's a fun event around town, and it's all down around Times Square. Basically, it'll go from Shuckers to Nervous Nelly's, Matanzas, kind of all that area.
Very good, thank you.
You know, Mary, that sums up my golf game. It has for years. If
Best
you
dressed.
can't play well, you might as well look good, you know, so.
You can be on your team anytime.
All right.
It's probably one of the funnest events here on the beach.
I'm going to say, the way I putt, there's going to be a lot of crawling.
Well, I'm going to let that go. Any further discussion? Any objection? That carries unanimously. Good luck, ladies, with both projects.
Thank you,
Sounds
guys.
great.
Thank you for everything.
I was kind of hoping someone would object, so this would be 4-1, but.
You kidding? Next item is final public comment. For anyone in the audience that would like to comment any further? Jane.
I would just like to say that I've gotten lots of phone calls on the public parking that you can use the pass underneath the bridge, especially like this weekend with the Walk of the Arches. A lot of people were discussing it was hard to find a place to get to the location to do the walk. And I really hope that you guys hold it to that December 31st end date, because tourists depend on that parking spaces, the locals depend on it, the stores depend on it, and we're paying for a pass to park there that we can't park. So it's not an option really to walk from here to there for a lot of older people. And the other thing is on your B, the community development of that, I just want to remind you, I'm happy to hear that you guys have changed your attitude about the workforce housing, because it is part of our comp plan. But when Marina Bay came before us, you guys sent somebody to say that the town of Fort Myers Beach was not in support. And so I hope that you will change that in supporting those who are very, very close to us, could help us with our workforce housing.
Yes.
It did get turned down.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? We'll close public comment. Town managers items.
Thank you. I just want to be clear with Ms. Plummer's comment. I believe it wasn't the current council who just have to go to that public hearing, so just to be clear about that. So I have 2 quick items for town council. One is that our disability insurance policy renews at the beginning of the calendar year. We were able to secure a quote for improved coverage for our employees. We know it will be at the same rate, may even be at a lesser rate. We're still in discussions with the insurance provider, but I assume the council has no objections if we can get better coverage at the same or lesser rate. Or any objections to switching firms?
No objection.
I insist that we pay more than we're paying now.
Okay, well, just to be clear about that. Then also, we're going to, unless the council has any objection, execute the renewal for the audit. I know that there's been some concerns about timeliness in the past, and we'll work very hard with the audit firm to try to make sure that we collaboratively work together to try to get it in sooner than later, has been the case in the past years. But at this point in time, I think the best course of action is to proceed with the firm.
That's all right with me if we have some assurances, because I would tell you, the audit committee was extremely frustrated with.
As worry. We are,
in the
I could
town.
tell you that 90 days or longer prior to receiving the audit, I personally met with the on-site auditor. She personally assured me that everything was better than last year. There were no issues, and yet it still took more than 80 days after their field work to complete the audit. So kind of know that they're running out of rope with us if they don't do a better job this year.
Well, that's good. They should know that. Okay, that's it?
Yes, sir.
Town attorney.
Two quick items. Mr. Mayor, members of the council. A number of years back, prior council approved a dock structure off of Crescent, the canal behind there. One of the property owners that was in the neighborhood sued. That lawsuit, or actually two lawsuits, sat for almost two and a half years without being moved forward. Just want to let you all know that we've worked out with the property owner to resolve those litigation without any need for any additional work. So those were dismissed this past week. So that's good news. And then broader picture, just wanted to make you all aware of a recent Florida Supreme Court decision. There's been a lot of discussion over the years about, can neighbors force a government to enforce regulations against another neighbor in the absence of any alleged illegality. And that issue was addressed last week by the Florida Supreme Court, and the Florida Supreme Court unequivocally said no, that the enforcement of your rules and regulations is a unique discretionary function vested in the local government that can't be enforced or forced upon by neighbors. That's the approach that I've always taken, and now there's a Florida Supreme Court case that supports that proposition. Nothing further.
I'm glad they finally started listening to you, John. All right. We'll move on to council members' items and reports, and we'll take care of some business here first before we get into our personal items.
Can I ask a procedural question? When I reviewed these, it appeared that we had only the number needed or even less than the number needed. John, can we do a mass appointment for everybody that's in here without voting on them individually? Because I don't think there's any contested races, as it were.
The only objection I would have to that is there are a couple of applicants in these that are on multiple boards that I think we have to look at.
Well, we could grant them a waiver as part of the motion.
The code does provide for that if you're on more than one board, that the waiver has to be granted, except for there are at least two boards that the town has that are statutorily created. That's primarily the LPA and the Nuisance Abatement Board. As such, being a member of that constitutes holding office, as that term has been interpreted by Florida statutes and the courts, and you can't be on those two boards at the same time because it constitutes dual office holding. So if it's any other board, then yes, then you could move to appoint them all globally.
Right, because the one in particular you're talking about with the NAB is Anita, who has already agreed to resign from that committee pending approval today.
We would need to ask Karen if she wants to resign from Bay Oaks in order to serve on the LPA.
No, because the Bay Oaks is not a statutorily created, it's a purely local advisory board. There can be, you can hold on its state created and
It's just, it has to be the NAB and the LPA at the same time, not either one of those alone. I got you.
Isn't the audit committee also included into that category?
The audit committee is also statutorily created, but our audit committee, we've revised, we've amended its powers to be slightly different than what the state statute, but yes, you are correct. Thank you for.
That's fine. No, it's not in.
There was another person in here, if memory serves me, Lori Wolf was on 2 or 3 different boards. Well, I guess it's a question of whether we want our volunteers serving on multiple boards or not, and
If we had a contested issue, I might say I want to open it up,
Yeah.
but we don't even have enough people to
No.
fill the vacancies
No.
as it is, so.
No.
I would point out one thing that I've asked in the past to try to look at reorganizing certain committees. Primarily BORCAB and CELCAB. CRAB is now kind of dormant. So to make them less property specific and more about parks and recreation and arts, I think. Have them, so the idea is you don't have a conflict where you don't have an event that maybe the people at CELCAB are doing for Mount House that gets big enough where they could do it at Bay Oaks without having to go to another board to look into it. So when we get these new facilities done, particularly Bay Oaks, we have committees that are focused on getting events to the different properties, not necessarily just a specific property. If we go through now, appoint members for a year to Bay Oaks and to CELCAB, then is that going to inhibit a reorganization of the committee?
I think we can change the ordinance about the purpose of committees at any time we want
Any
to.
point. The committees are created, I believe, by the original creationists by ordinance. The appointments by resolution, have to take a look, but you can always modify it.
The thing is, if we do decide that we're going to combine these committees into like one Parks and Recreation Committee, then we're going to have a lot of good people who are maybe left out.
You could potentially expand the size of it to merge both.
Okay, I'm going to try this and see if it works.
Okay,
I'm going to move that we appoint all the applicants listed in our notebook to the appropriate committee that they requested, that we honor the resignation of Anita Saracita from the NAB so that she can accept the appointment to the LPA, and that we grant a waiver to those who may be asking to serve on more than one committee.
well done.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Any objection? Motion carries unanimously. Very good. Okay, you're all in one fell swoop. Okay. All right, now we'll go back to the individual members and any items you may have. Councilman Allers.
Just a couple quick ones, still waiting on an update for the timeline for the AV work. And get that at some point. And also, as of yesterday, Lee County Sheriff's Office has still not received a lease agreement for the outreach property.
I know that I had communicated with staff about that about a week and a half ago, but we'll make sure they get it today.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
Nothing.
Nothing further, thank you.
Don't have anything else to add either. So, if there's nothing else for the good of the order from anyone, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 11:28.
Move.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any objection? I didn't think so. We're adjourned, 11:28.